Good evening and welcome to a very special Live Green and Prosper opportunity here in our studios at WCTE. We are so excited to have a very special guest with us here in the Upper Cumberland and Middle Tennessee visiting, and I want to welcome you. It's Victor Vasquez. He is the Rural Development USDA Deputy Undersecretary, all the way here from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And Deputy, do I call you Deputy Undersecretary Vasquez or do I call you Victor?
Victor's fine.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, great. Well, Victor, tell us a little bit. You know, I know that the USDA Rural Development office here in the Upper Cumberland is very active and very well respected, and I feel certain that's the case all across the country. But tell us a little bit about the USDA.
I think that most people will have a notion of USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, as a department that serves mostly agriculture and farmers. And I think oftentimes they don't realize how expansive the department is and what all we do. For example, it's not commonly known, and most people don't realize, that the Forest Service is within the Department of Agriculture. We have Food and Nutrition Service, which supports the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the Food Stamp Program, Women, Infant, and Children's, the WIC program. All of that is within USDA. You know, and then
I didn't know that.
Yes, so all of the SNAP, we've had the name change. SNAP comes through USDA. It probably encumbers close to 2/3 of the total USDA budget, and then Women, Infant, and Children, and then we have Natural Resource Conservation Service, we have the Farm Service Agency, we have Ag Marketing Service, we have Rural Development. We have 7 major agencies within the department that support pretty much all of the elements that support rural communities and agriculture. So it's more than just agriculture. It's about the communities that are in and around agriculture and also in and around natural resource-based areas like forests.
Right.
And public lands. And so, you know, it's pretty expansive. Overall, just in rural development alone, we have over 6,000 employees and cover pretty much every rural county in America.
Well, I was going to ask you, because I know that USDA has been referred to as the People's Department, right?
It is, yes.
President Lincoln coined that phrase. And what's your phrase?
Well, with our new Secretary Vilsack, who comes from Iowa and was a governor of a rural state, he's actually made it a point to remind us that what we do through USDA affects people every day in every way. And what that means is that it doesn't matter whether you're going into an urban center or metropolitan center, that if you go to a grocery store, most of the stuff there comes from agriculture, from rural. 85% of all the water comes from rural and public lands, and lands that basically USDA oversees. Power production,
wow.
You know, the generation. Most of the generation activity begins in rural, and the people that operate those power plants or those windmills or any of the new energy that is used in urban centers, typically, I mean, I'm generalizing because there are some small power productions in the urban centers, but most of it, the larger plants, begin in rural and then transmission into the urban center. So, you know, it's hard to go into anywhere across America and do something that doesn't have some influence that comes from rural communities and that USDA has been a part of.
Well, let me let folks here in our viewing audience know a little more even about you. You've had 2 decades of experience in government and private sector and community and economic development on all levels. You received your Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Oregon and told me that you spent a few decades there, actually, right? In Oregon, we certainly know Oregon's such a tremendous farming region, agricultural region, but you're from Texas.
Yes.
A neighboring, well, not a neighboring state to Tennessee, but you know, it's a sister state.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. You hold an MPA from Harvard, John F. Kennedy School of Government there at Harvard. You also pursued coursework towards your PhD in Community and Economic Development from Southern New Hampshire University. So you've really seen all different areas of our country.
I have.
And now you're in Washington, and you're working with Agricultural Secretary Tom Vilsack, which I just have to say that our Live Green and Prosper initiative that we're currently involved in, and we're working with the USDA, and we're working with so many agencies that are helping our local farmer. I heard him speak on NPR, and one of the things he said, which I appreciated so much, was the importance of connecting the local consumer to the local farmer and keeping our economic development within an 80-mile radius, feeding our community to develop a healthier lifestyle and reducing our carbon footprint. And we see that as being such a tremendous asset. And I know you're very much involved in dropping those county lines and seeing our area as an area of engagement.
Yes.
Do you want to share about that?
Yeah, I think first the effort that we've launched, and basically it's the Secretary's initiative on Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, is really promoting that healthier lifestyle, but also reducing the carbon footprint. But it also helps the local small farmer.
Sure.
It helps the local small farmer in accessing in a better way local markets, but beyond that also begin to look at, you know, what they can do to promote their fresher products in the regional market. And then ultimately we need to look at agriculture as a system and as a process, and how do we make sure that we maintain a healthy lifestyle, reduce carbon footprint, and at the same time allow the small farmer to be competitive and to be able to maintain and support those small farms. I think that if we look in and around our communities, oftentimes we've forgot that, you know, we have schools, we have public facilities that have large kitchens that, you know, if we paid attention to what our local producers are putting out, that we connect to that market and utilize that, we're going to get fresher product. And we're going to have a healthier lifestyle and at the same time supporting the local and regional economy. But beyond that, as they become more successful, then they can become competitive in a larger regional effort economically.
It just seems we have such concern about the quality of our food, the safety of our food, and certainly our local farmers are doing what they can to ensure that. And you all are providing tremendous support, as well as many agencies. Our Tennessee Department of Agriculture. There's so many agencies that are working to help the local farmer, and in turn helping the local consumer. Do you think will it help the region in health and economy and a quality of life environment?
Well, I think that will, and I think that's just one piece of it. One of the agencies, and it's an agency that I'm directly involved with, is rural development. Within rural development, we do a lot of things that help support the small farmer, but also that support economic activity that makes that local market connection, that access to the economic activity. But within communities, and I think this is the part that a lot of people aren't aware of that we do in rural America, is that we have an ability to provide home loan programs, to provide rental assistance, sometimes voucher when necessary. We have business industry loan programs that oftentimes, depending on the activity, we have the ability to provide a combination of loan and grant, but loan up to $25 million. So we can fund large projects. We have rural business cooperative service that helps businesses and farmers look at business models in different ways. And we have a rural utility service that is involved in helping communities put in waste water and wastewater treatment. We did USDA initially when we put in telephone systems. I mean, that's an old system now, but telephones across rural America were really put in place through the rural utility service, electricity, and now, with the advance in technology, broadband. So we're involved in trying to get broadband out to rural America. But I think the most important piece is that we have these elements that really can help revitalize and put in infrastructure for rural communities, but it's done with a team that is local. For example, we have a state director in your state, but in every state across the country, who is a political appointee. They're appointed by the president. My position, while I'm a deputy undersecretary, our instruction and our belief and our value is, first and foremost, we support our state directors. And your state director, Bobby Good, if he wants us to support him in any venture or activity, then that's going to be our priority. Because, you know, and I think oftentimes, like the military says, you know what, they're on the ground, they're the point of the spear.
Right.
And most of our state directors and our field staff live here in your communities. This is not government from Washington. These are people that live here, that work here day in and day out, that are supporting local efforts, and then they're your voice to us about what you need.
And you're extremely accessible. I just want to say the local offices here, if you've not been to your USDA Rural Development office, they're accessible. There's information about these loan programs. There's information about enhancement programs. It's tremendous, and I have to thank you. Our production equipment right now is thanks to an RUS grant for public facilities, public broadcasting facilities, and we're grateful for that. Here's a statistic that I didn't know. Rural America is home to 1/5 of the nation's population. Of the 60 million people who live in rural America, only 2 are directly engaged in production agriculture. We're seeing that, aren't we, more and more, Victor, that we're 3 generations removed from the farm. 1% of the population is farming. We need to, I would think, to protect our food infrastructure, to encourage people to go into agriculture.
I agree, and we are working with you know, new and emerging farmers. I think going back to the know your farmer, know your food, that's not only about reducing carbon footprint and a healthier lifestyle, it's also about supporting small farmers. We do need to make sure that we shore that up and we protect it and we value it and we have a greater understanding of what they are. I mean, beyond agriculture, they're good stewards of the land. But we do have a responsibility to look at how we administer programs in a way that encourages new farmers to start up. And so we are actually actively pursuing that, also with minority farmers in the Mississippi Delta and then in the Southwest. And believe it or not, in like Oregon and Washington, we're getting a lot of Latino farmers that are emerging.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Let me just, if you're just tuning in, let me tell you that we're very pleased to have with us a very special guest in the Upper Cumberland region, and that is Deputy Undersecretary for the USDA Rural Development Department, Victor Vasquez. And Victor, thank you so much for being here. We still have quite a bit of time that we can talk, and I want you to share a little bit about, have you been traveling quite a bit around the country?
I have, yes.
Can you tell us about some of the exciting things that you're seeing in our country in this area?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I feel very fortunate to have the ability to see different parts of the country, and I think anyone that has the opportunity will immediately realize that this is a special place to live, and especially in rural America, because what I have seen and what I see is that, you know, we may have our disagreements and our differences, but when things get tough, people come together and they work to support each other. And I'm seeing more and more communities, counties, and even states that are starting to collaborate and starting to think about how we do things as a region, how we do this with not just one community standing alone, but multiple communities and multiple counties, and in some cases even, you know, multiple states combining and joining and supporting each other over a common effort. Recently, I got involved on a project in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, and it's along the Columbia Gorge all the way to Idaho, food processors. So these are people that are buying the goods from farmers and then processing them in canned goods into green beans and fruits or what have you. But they've seen that their livelihood and their industry has been threatened. So they've combined together to form a group to look at, okay, how do we improve what we do? How do we improve on our employment and training? How do we improve on our energy consumption and use? How do we improve in getting better access to local markets? How do we use our colleges and universities for research? They've been working together for 7 years and actually have become more competitive, and they continue to work together. But here's an industry that is involved with state and local government and nonprofits to figure out how do we shore up this industry so we maintain a livelihood, not just for the industry, but the people that support it. I'm working with a community in Wisconsin that's looking at how connecting agriculture around Know Your Farmer, Your Food, but then how do you make that urban-rural connection, and how do you provide that food system supply to that urban center and do it in a way that involves education and all of those elements that go into an entire system. So I've had the opportunity to really see different kinds of efforts and projects where communities are coming together to look at the way I like to view it is it's more of a system than just an individual project or an effort.
Right. It's that regional collaboration.
Yeah, how's everything connected?
Exactly.
Right.
And you're seeing a lot of activity.
A lot of that.
How important is broadband access?
Well, I would...
to that kind of initiative or to any initiative?
What I would say is akin to where I came from. I'm originally from South Texas, and I come from a border community that has, up to the mid-'70s, there were no interstate freeways, and it was mostly secondary roads, and even into like the early 80s, no colleges or universities, so it was pretty isolated. Now you have some interstate and some colleges and universities, but you still have some of that isolation. Broadband is critical to business, to small business, because that's how small business connects to either regional or even sometimes international activity or national activity. So it's critical to small business and even some of the larger industries, but it's also critical to the education of children because nowadays it's very difficult to do anything without internet access, which is why, and we were talking earlier coming here about rural libraries. If you look at rural libraries and those rural libraries that are limited with internet access, that have limited number of computers, you see that oftentimes that they're backed up with people signed up and waiting just to get on the internet. And young people, they use that and they learn from that.
Right.
So I think that it's critical for me. I mean, the priority for me is that for education, for the education of our young people.
I totally agree with you, and I think it's so important for that rural collaboration too, or in that regional collaboration. When you tour in Tennessee, have you been to Tennessee before?
I had worked with the Clinton administration and had been years back. I haven't been here recently.
Yeah. I know that you're excited about the things that are happening in our state, and there are a lot of tremendous things happening. What are your feelings about traveling?
Well, my reaction is because we have to pay attention to what's going on in every state.
Sure.
Is the thing that I notice that stands out in Tennessee is the notion of that there's a lot of emphasis on leadership. And if you look at community and economic development, that's the first stage of any successful effort leading toward an economic strategy. You have to have the leadership, you have to build that capacity, you have to have the infrastructure, the economic activity, the business, and then ultimately your strategy. So there is a healthy emphasis in leadership, which I think is critical to any future success. There's also a lot of activity around collaboration and regionalism and regional activity. And I think that if you look at how industry and economies operate, they don't operate in isolated communities. They operate across regions. They operate, sometimes along an entire river, or depending on a natural resource. But it's regional in nature, and there are multiple companies that make up an entire industry. And within that industry, then there are small manufacturers that support that industry. Well, those small manufacturers typically live in rural America. And so it would be hard to think about an economic strategy without having to look at what's taking place regionally. And I'll give you an example of when I worked in Washington State. I was involved in that Boeing 787 project where we were trying to make sure that Boeing stayed in Washington State. So we had to do research on that industry, and what we found is that a lot of and this is typical for most industries, a lot of first-tier suppliers are all over the world. But second and third tier suppliers we found are regional, and we found that some of those small manufacturers that supplied efforts to Boeing were from Seattle all the way across the state to Spokane, and a lot of those small manufacturers were in rural Washington, and we didn't know they were there. And if you don't know they're there, then we're not likely to invest in them and support them and advance that technology and make them more competitive. So over time, maybe they can be the first tier. And I think that should be our goal, is what are our major industries and how do we recapture and invest in a way that that first tier activity stays here.
Stays right here. You're absolutely right. Well, I'm so excited that you're here. I want to share that Erica Duarte is one of our staff here, and she and I took advantage of a program that you all are partners in, and that's Agri-Leadership 2020. And we just finished our class, and it was phenomenal. I would greatly encourage any of our folks in the region to take part. You don't have to be a farmer. I'm not a farmer to take advantage of this. It's a wonderful opportunity. And in the time that we have left, the 5 minutes or so that we have left, what are those programs that the USDA Rural Development offers that people, the general viewing audience, really need to know about and need to take access of, and how can they get information about that?
Well, first, I mean, we do have a very good website for the department. So I think if you just Google for United States Department of Agriculture, you'll get that. But I would say for the general public, and we don't talk about it very often, is that we have a land grant system in the state universities. By a state university, I would say, like for me, it was like Oregon State or so.
Any state run, like Tennessee Tech is a state university.
Any state university that is a land grant, typically they have extension service, and extension agents were really truly the first community development people. I mean, they're the ones that during the Depression went out and worked with communities and showed them how to preserve and can and how to stretch the dollar and those kinds of things that helped the average citizen. So we do have extension service.
Like UT Extension here, University of Tennessee Extension is here. And we have the Natural Resource Conservation Service, those people that work not just with farmers, but in areas where you need to look at the land and how do you preserve and conserve, and how do you use the landscape in a way that maintains and helps encourage a healthy water system. And the Forest Service. I mean, the Forest Service is looking at managing, and they have parks, and they're trying to encourage more activity in the forest and tourism. For us, rural development. For the small business or the business, we have our business loan program, and depending on who you talk to, believe it or not, in rural development, USDA, we're either the 5th or the 6th largest bank in the country, because of the volume of business activity that we generate across rural America. So we have, our whole business suite and activities through the Rural Business Service and rural housing. So, they're, the home loan programs through USDA. And then ultimately the Rural Utility Service for the larger organizations for broadband. I did forget in one in particular, rural housing, we have a community facilities program that helps support funding for libraries, fire departments, emergency vehicles. So, I mean, I worked on a project in Oklahoma where we did a rodeo ground through a community facilities project. So there are a lot of things that we do that the average community and citizen, if there's an interest and they're involved in their community and they're in a rural area, that rural development would be probably the first place to start. And they will know about the other activities within the department. And so they really could go online and check that out, or call their local office.
Right.
Right.
Call, our state director's office. I don't have the number handy, but
we can get you that information, no doubt. Well, we are so glad that you took the time out. I know you have a tremendously busy schedule. You're here for the Rural Development Conference.
Yes, I am.
That will be held at Tennessee Tech. And by the time folks watch this, that will be behind us. But I know that that taking this time out was I'm sure, a challenge to your schedule, but so very much appreciated.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and we so appreciate you for watching and hope that you'll continue to go online at WCTE, check out our Live Green and Prosper initiative, and go to that website as well. All you have to do is click on the ladybug, or you can click on WCTE's Live Green and Prosper and see some of those incredible partnerships we have with USDA, the UT Extension Office, the Pick Tennessee Products, Local Table. It's so much, because it's absolutely true what you just said. Know your farmer, know your food, and don't forget that the USDA is the People's Department.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching, and we hope that you'll go online and check out all these great services.